title. So yeah, 50 not out, but I want to put a subtitle in there in as much as it's the rise of the female maturepreneur. Because yeah, my name's Kathy Ennis and my business is Little Piggy, and I think Olivia gets the prize, the first person who's actually turned to me and said, oh, so you help businesses get off to market. And so yeah, that's basically what I do. But really, what I'm about is I'm about helping female business owners, or those who want to start a business, reach the potential that they deserve or dream of. And it's this concept of taking people from their passion point through to profit. And within that, I specialise in working with women who are on the more mature end of things. So women who are 50 plus. And there's a very good reason as to why I do that. But I just want to put into perspective what it is I do as a mentor, and the types of businesses that I work with, because I think there perhaps is a bit of a misapprehension sometimes about what a business mentor is. And for me, the difference between mentoring and coaching is the coach helps people recognise their inner strength and the things that they can do. A business mentor quite often gives them a kick up the bum. And so that's very much where I will come from. I recognise that people do need to build a certain amount of resilience in themselves, but I also recognise that a lot of people in business, or people going into business for the first time, don't know stuff. They don't know what button to press, they don't know what things to add up, they don't know how to do things. And that's what I do, I help them with those things. I also specialise in working with micro businesses. So it's businesses across the board, but they are tiny businesses in as much as the number of people that actually work within them. Now, in the UK, a micro business is designated as a business that has fewer than 8 people involved in it. In the UK, 80% of the businesses are micro. Of that 80%, 75% are 2 or fewer. So we have hundreds of thousands of businesses that are one-person operations, and a lot of those are female-run businesses. And they don't get the attention that they need, and they don't get the recognition that they deserve. I mean, in 2017, businesses of that size brought in £552 billion to the British economy. Okay, and so when people describe them as lifestyle, Steve, okay, they are not. And the other thing about the side hustle, which, if you don't know the term, it means somebody who is running a business on the side of perhaps working full time. That's 40% of the UK workforce are running a business on the side of their employment. So these are the kinds of businesses that I work with. And their aspirations are not necessarily to become massive. Their aspirations are not necessarily to become, aspirations are not necessarily to become employers in the sense of having an employee. They may have aspirations to move towards outsourcing, which I think, as somebody who managed people for a very long time, is the way to go. So what is this thing about this age of 50 and 55? I celebrated a big birthday recently with a 0 on the end of it, and it didn't have a 5 in front, it had another number. And I think in terms of how I got to be doing what I do, is part of why I work with the people that I work with. Now, I was asked to contribute towards an article recently by an organisation called Enterprise Nation. And one of the questions I was asked was, as a child, what were your aspirations? And I basically just burst out laughing, because the 1970s was a very different country. And it was a very different place if you came from a very low-level working class family with literacy problems, where your parents worked 7 days a week in order to make sure that they were not in negative financial situation. And so at school, I I was the second tranche of what they called ROSLA. And ROSLA was the raising of the school leaving age, which meant you had to stay on to do O-levels. And there was no expectation. My school had no tradition of people doing this kind of stuff. They came in, they stayed till they were 15, then they went to Woolworths, and that was it. So there was this bunch of us who had to stay on and do our O-levels. And you know what? I surprised everyone, including myself, that I got some. And I thought, hang on a sec, if I've got these, it means I don't have to go out to work. So can I do some A-levels, please? And the school didn't know what to do, because there were 9 of us that said that we wanted to stay on and do A-levels. And they had to find us a route, and they had to find teachers who could teach us. So we did some of those, and then I got some, half decent ones, not brilliant, and I went off to do a degree that fitted me for absolutely nothing. I loved it. It was a humanities degree. I did a bit of art, I did a bit of philosophy and psychology, some English, some history, but mainly I studied film, so I sat in the dark for 3 years. And when I came out, I'd had a fantastic time, but I was suited for basically nothing. And believe it or not, I came out in a recession. So jobs were a little bit hard to come by, and I applied, and I ended up getting an interview in my local public library for a job as a library assistant. And I decided, yeah, this is great, I'm going to go for this. And in the interview, I had a road to Damascus moment, because I was asked this question: have you ever considered librarianship as a career? And I thought, I've been on the dole for 6 months, and I've been looking at neighbours every day, and I'm going crazy. So I said, it's been my absolute dream. And I got the job. But what I didn't know was that they had a training scheme. And because I'd said that, they put me on the day release course to go and do my postgraduate diploma, which would now be a master's in library and information science. So I went off and I did that, and I absolutely loved it. And very soon I moved away from public libraries, and I moved into further and higher education, and I spent 20 years there managing libraries, learning resources, teaching information literacy before people knew what information literacy was, and thinking about the scary mixture of Minority Report and Blade Runner that we heard about yesterday. I think one of the things that we need to be doing is teaching people information literacy, particularly now in the digital world. But so I spent about 20 years doing that, and I loved it. I was a flaming redhead with a very Irish complexion, and I've always been fat. And I was always told to stay a bit quiet, wear black, and sit in a corner, because there's no room for you, okay? And a really strange thing happened about 20 years into my career, and my gorgeous husband bought me something called a colour analysis, okay? Any Bridget Jones watchers might know what it is, and your mums might have had them. But the thing is, this thing changed my life almost overnight. So somebody telling me, why aren't you wearing orange and lime green? Why aren't you wearing a bit of lipstick? All of those kinds of things. Now the interesting thing was with that is the difference it made to me inside, and the positivity it gave me about who I was as a person. Interestingly, within 6 months of that thing and me taking these things on board, I had been headhunted. I had a fantastic job working for a professional association, travelling all over the place, speaking at conferences. The first one was a bit like this. And yeah, I had a really, really great time. And so this is about 25 years ago. About 5 years afterwards, I thought, you know, the difference it's made to me, how can it make differences to other people? So I started a side hustle. And I started working in personal branding and working with people about how they get their messages across in that first 7 seconds in terms of meeting somebody. That time before you've even said hello and told them what your name is. And I absolutely loved that. And the interesting thing was, although I'd only intended to do it as a side thing, a sort of weekend hobby, that kind of thing, gradually it started taking over. And within about 3 years, I was in a position where I didn't actually have enough time to do my day job. because this thing was taking over. So cutting a long story short, after a few years of gradually taking my hours down, which is what side hustlers often have to do, I was offered redundancy, and I said, yes, that's great. And they gave me a shed load of money to go away, and that was fantastic. And then we should ride off into the sunset. But that didn't happen because I took the money, and by that time I was working a lot in organisations and helping them understand. We talked about dress codes last night, okay? Helping them with things like how do you keep a person individual in an organisational value system, that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I took the redundancy money, and then the recession hit. So the redundancy money started to dwindle because that was what I was having to fall back on, because as soon as the recession hit, training budgets went. I went back to doing one-to-one colour analysis, image consultancy, in order to keep the wolf from the door, and then my pension was defrauded. And so, you know, from a position of being in quite a really good situation, it was like, what? And I'm actually in the process of writing a book at the moment called The Nicholas Entrepreneur, because it got to a point where I couldn't afford to buy any new underwear. And it was like, do I go out and get another job? Or do I actually really buckle down? Because one of the things I recognised was I didn't know how business worked. A lot of it had been luck and a bit of force of personality, I think, up until that point. And then I realised that I wasn't really using all of the things that a business person should be using. So I went off, I put my nose to the grindstones, and the biggest thing, know your numbers. And it was about finding out what was happening in terms of my business. Yeah, I was doing all the marketing front end stuff, that was all really lovely, but it just wasn't working because I didn't have the back side of it. That sounded a bit odd, but I didn't have the back end of it. So, cutting a long story short, things got a bit better, and as they got better, people started asking me, how do you do that thing? And I'd show them. Come to me with a cup of coffee and we'll sit down and I'll show you how to do this stuff. Kathy, you've got 5 minutes, can we sit down and talk about it? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it turned out, after a little while, I had a full diary, an addiction to coffee, and again, not much money coming in until somebody said, well, why aren't you charging for that? I thought, can I charge for that? I'm just helping folk. And so the concept of business mentoring. So I went off and got my qualifications and started to structure the business around that. So what I do now is it's a bit of sitting by Nelly. So been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, put it in the washing machine, it shrunk, had to go out and buy another one. Okay, it's that kind of thing. So the thing that has shown me now is that, yeah, we spoke a lot about resilience yesterday, and I think that's absolutely true. You've got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and start all over again. But I think as women, we need a bit of extra support because often there are things around us that are pulling on us in different ways. And actually, although we're really good at networking, I think we're quite often bad at asking people for help and support. So it's about getting out and helping people in that way. And I think in terms of the more mature person starting a business for the first time, we're looking at a real massive growth. I mean, back in the 1970s, women who were 50 were old. They were. And their life expectancy was a lot shorter. I mean, in 1970, your life expectancy as a female was 75. And there were 9.5 million women over the age of 50 in the UK. Now your life expectancy is 83, and there are 12.5 million women over the age of 50. So there's more of them, and they're living longer. And when you get to about 50, when me is 55, you think there's more gone than there is in front. So what am I going to do with it? Am I going to still keep doing the same thing, or am I going to do something that I really want to do? And so you're getting a lot of this happening. The Institute for Fiscal Studies did a report recently where they spoke about women's prime working age, and that's 24 to 54. So what happens at 55? Is it that we're just, okay, you know, Diane yesterday spoke about the menopause. You know, let's not underplay it. It makes a massive difference to not only your physicality, but what goes on up here. And I think this is something that is starting to happen with women and their approach to how they take care of themselves in later life. We have also got this glut of women who are financially unsecure. And I don't know if any of you are following the news, but today there's a massive High Court judgment over what's called the 50s women born in the 1950s who were not given enough time to prepare for the fact that the pensionable age was going to be increased, and have on average lost £40,000 as a result of that. So fingers crossed that they're going to get their way. So I think women in their 50s are starting businesses for lots of different reasons. Redundancy is a massive one. I bet loads of people from Thomas Cook are now thinking about what is it I'm going to be doing going forward. They want the flexibility, they want the lifestyle choices, they want to sort of manage themselves after this sort of empty nesting stuff starts to hit them. But it's this whole thing about they're still vibrant, vital people. They're not there to be put on the scrap heap. If you're 50, you've probably got 40 to 50 years in front of you. And so they should be celebrated for doing these kinds of things. I used to work with an organisation called Prime. It was one of my contracts. It was the Prince's Initiative for Mature Enterprise. And the role of that charity was to help people over 50 who were starting their business for the first time. And it was fantastic. We used to do loads of things like business planning, marketing, etc., etc. It was the Prince's Trust for the 50-plussers. Doesn't exist anymore because apparently it's not needed. And for me, that's an absolute shame, because there is little, if no, regard to people who are more mature in terms of business startup. Very hard for them to get finance as well, if they are going down that route. But most of the businesses I work with are not looking for finance, because they're not looking for businesses like that. They're looking for businesses that they can self-start and that will bring them the things that they want and enable them to leave something for people that they love. So in terms of sort of to sum up the kinds of things that I've been saying, as people who, many of whom are under the age of 50, and not very far under the age of 50, it's something for you to be aware of going forward, that there is potential at any age. You can do anything you want at any age that you choose. One of the builders in my house at the moment, his mum is 83 years old. She set up her own business where she does lunches for 3 local nursery schools. She's up at 6:30 every morning buying the stuff, taking it back, cooking it, and then delivering it to the schools. Okay? There are examples of women in their 70s, 80s starting a business for the first time that are really, really successful. So there should be no age limit on that, and there's no limit on the potential. But I think there are 3 key things that mature women actually need in terms of support. And I think that they need some financial support. So the Rose Review that came out earlier this year talked about that if women's businesses were given more support generally, we'd be adding another £250 billion to the UK economy. But then when you look at lending from banks, etc., I think it was last year, men's lending, I'll look at my notes here, the lending to male-run businesses was £5 billion, the lending to female-run businesses was 30 million. So there is a big disparity going on there. So we do need more finance going into female-run businesses, but we also need people that are lending money to think about businesses across the whole board, not just the small and medium and large ones. It's the ones that are sitting down there that are actually the bedrock of what the country is doing. And you know what? Most of them don't even have to worry about Brexit because they don't import anything. Okay? There's a skills issue here. A lot of mature women these days are digital immigrants. They didn't grow up with it, and therefore some of it is really scary. And I think some of the people I work with, if they heard you speak yesterday, they'd have run out of the room with screaming and tearing their hair out, because it would have just been, what? I can't even work out how to do a Facebook ad, you know? So I think... Yeah. But I think there is a skill set there that needs to be acknowledged. And I think recognition. I think that's the key thing, is that these businesses are often hidden. We were talking at breakfast about the idea about in any village there are probably 20 or 30 businesses running that you've got no idea about because they're all happening in somebody's garage or basement or bedroom. And so these businesses are everywhere and they are contributing and they should be recognised for that. And I just want to finish up with saying that a couple of 100 years ago, a massive insult was thrown at the UK because Napoleon said that we're a nation of shopkeepers. And that's fantastic because we still are. Shopkeeper, mom and pop shop on the corner. Tupit, you said you worked in your mum and dad's shop. That's it. Those are the kind of businesses that built Britain, and actually they're the kind of businesses that still keep us going. So yeah, all power to the mature female entrepreneur.